Well, that's a wrap on that wall and the day. Starting to get a little dark out. Time to do some chores.
Welcome back to the Tomarosa. Today we're going to start working on putting the plywood on the ceiling of the dairy. As you remember last time, we got the wall between the dairy and the barn done. Stacy's in the background there. He's doing a little bit of caulking to air seal the end before we start putting up the ceiling.
Good morning. We are here, as Virginia mentioned. We're going to put some plywood on the ceiling, and to facilitate that, we rented this from our local rental center. It's actually a drywall lift, but since we're using sheet goods that are just plywood anyway, it should work as good. So that way we don't have to try and lift them up. So we're very excited about this. Hopefully it works as good as we think it will. And yeah, we've never used one before, so if it isn't too much of a disaster, you'll probably see it on the video. The 4x8 sheets are going to be running this way, and the end will be on this purlin right here. And then the other end will be on this purlin right here, because they are 24 inches on center. These outer two purlins, they're a little bit off because the roof is at an angle and it's not an exact 12 feet. So those will be filled in with smaller sheets.
It's like the Mars rover right here.
We got the big sheets of plywood on the ceiling. We used the drywall jack for that, so now we got to return it because it's just a rental, but it was definitely worth the money. So now we'll just cut short pieces for top and bottom, and we'll get the ceiling closed in. Okay, we are back at it, continuing with covering the ceiling. So now we're doing short panels. I got one up, as you can see. So I just need to go all the way down to the other end. Over the next couple days, I'm going to work at getting this space sealed up. That way we can actually run a heater in here, make working a lot more comfortable. So let's get going. Run at you in a fit of bovine rage where you always have cows around. Got it done all the way down. So next, I got to do it all the way back. This time on the lower side. It's a lot easier when you're not working on a ladder. Probably do that tomorrow. Alright, because we want to get heat in the dairy in the near future to make it more comfortable work, I've started doing some rudimentary air sealing. Tyvek tape. We use it a lot on our house. It's very handy. It comes in roll, just like tape. But it pretty much sticks to anything, and you can stick it in cold temperatures, and eventually this whole wall will be insulated. Hello again. We are back at it in the dairy, still working on the ceiling. We got the upper edge all covered yesterday, and now we got to work on the lower edge. Okay, I got 3 of the 5 bays done, including this first bay, which required a little bit of extra cutting to go around stuff. But overall, I think it went pretty good. And now I got to go work on the last 2, which is the milking parlor down here. The sheathing is now on the ceiling for the entire dairy. There's still a fair amount of work to do. It's got to be smoothed out, screw holes filled. Eventually it'll be primed and painted. But for now, it sure does look nice. And here soon we'll be able to get some heat going on in here to make working much more comfortable. Welcome back. We are in the dairy and we are getting ready to start putting in some partition walls. Right now, as you can see, it is just one very long space. But eventually there will be 4 separate rooms. To put up the partition walls, they're going to be wood framed, but I do need to get them up off the floor. So what we're going to do is, you can see that stacked in the corner there, we're going to pour some concrete curbs that the walls will sit on, and I've gotten started already. So you can see I've run some chalk lines. We can't just pour the new concrete onto the existing concrete, we got to anchor it to it. We will use a bonding agent, but also I'll be drilling into the existing concrete and anchoring some rebar. Then that rebar will be tied in with other rebar above it, and we'll pour around that rebar, and that should hold everything together. We got all our holes drilled, so now we need to go back and clean things up. We gotta make sure they're nice and clean before we try putting any epoxy in there.
In preps to get everything ready for the dairy, we actually have to move in our bulk tank before we put up the walls, which is what we are working on today. The plan is we're going to take the tractor, hoist up the tank, put it in the dairy back on the dolly, and then actually install it once everything is done and ready for installation.
Are we filming? Alright. We have the first piece of equipment in our dairy. This is our bulk tank. And we actually acquired this way back in 2014. So we've been holding on to it, been taking up room in our shop. But now it is in here because it's wider than any of the doors. And so it's prudent to go ahead and get it in before we build the walls that separate the different rooms. Pretty much everything that's removable has been stripped off of it. That's just to make it a little lighter. But we'll get it put back together and put it back to use. It's a Van Vetter 130-gallon milk tank, and it was actually manufactured in Seattle, Washington. Good morning. We're back at work here on the barn. The holes are drilled, they're cleaned out. I'm just going to let the dust settle for a few minutes in there before I go back, and we'll start epoxying in rebar and studs. Okay, now we just glue in the rebar. Okay, now we just got to let it cure. Well, there you go. Rebar is in place. Now it is time to build some wood forms around it to contain the concrete, and we'll be getting us some curbs going. The floor is not level, and that's by design. We want water to drain towards the drains. So I have to scribe these form boards. So all I'm using is a small piece of wood, which the thickness of the wood represents the greatest distance between the bottom of this form board here and the floor with the board level. So I'm just going along scribing it, and then I will take it out and follow the line with the saw, and then when I put it back in, it should be level. Let's go see how we did. Well, we're all formed up. Tomorrow we pour. Getting ready to pour concrete. Got all my supplies staged. Got some plastic protection down on the floor. I've already applied a bonding agent to the existing concrete. So now I just need to mix it up and pour it in. There you go, 3 poured curbs. We poured the curbs for the dividing walls a few days ago. Let's pull off the forms and see what we got. When the forms are still in the concrete, it's like Schrodinger's concrete. It is both perfect and a disaster at the same time. So let's pull these forms off and face reality. This side looks pretty good. I'll buy that. Little touch up. But good enough for government work. Oh wait, I'm not in the government anymore. Good enough for Tomarosa. It took a few minutes to kind of clean up after myself in here. So now we need to build some walls upon them. The first thing I'm gonna do is put up the top plate, which is gonna serve 2 purposes. 1, it's obviously the top of the wall. And 2, it's gonna go ahead and box out these rafters here, so kind of make a box beam, finish that off. Of course, I got some lovely angles going on, so I'm gonna have to cut the top and bottom of that board at an angle, so we'll see how I do. All right, it's up. It didn't go up how I planned it would go up, but it's up. Woo! Now we need to put the bottom plate on. It is a pressure treated. Before I lay it down, I'm gonna put some silicone in here to seal it. This is the kind of caulking I like. You don't have to be neat. Just got to get a wrench and tighten those down, and then we'll start building the wall. I've gone ahead and laid out my studs along this bottom plate. I didn't really keep to any standard convention of 16 or 24 inches on center because we have a lot of sinks and other stuff hanging off this wall. So instead, I put the studs where I needed to put the studs to support that. So there's some oddball spacing. Nothing's over, I think, about 20 inches on center. So it's still a plenty sturdy wall. Next, what I got to do is take all these markings where I marked for the studs and transfer them to the top plate. And the way I do that is with a plumb bob. Meet my friend Bob. To lay out the studs, what I do is I use my friend Bob here to connect the top and the bottom. With Bob, sometimes you got to be a bit patient. Then once I'm happy, I make a mark up here. I've got to do it about 6 more times, but you don't need to be here for that. Well, that's a wrap on that wall and the day. Starting to get a little dark out. Time to do some chores. Tomorrow, though, we'll do this wall. Yay. More walls. Looks good though. Here we are, folks. I'm in the milking parlor. This wall here that you watched me build represents the separation wall between the parlor and the milk house. So this wall here is where a lot of the sinks will be. That's why there's a stub out for the plumbing. And the doorway will be right here. But wait, there's more. While you were gone, I also framed this wall here. So this wall separates the milk house from the processing room. And it has a couple of features. We're going to have a glass block window in here just to let light in. And then in addition to the door for the humans, there's also a port down here for passing the pipeline that will transfer the milk from the bulk tank to the pasteurizer. The bulk tank right now is sitting roughly in the position that it will eventually be once it's all set up. When you look at the wall from this side, it's easier to see how the window will work, and then also the port for the pipeline. It's just loosely in there for now. So what we have here is the standard 16 by 32 glass block window panel. And we are putting this in between the milk house and the processing room. And this is purely a luxury. There's no practical need for this in our dairy, but you know, growing up around dairies, milk processing plants, it seemed like glass block windows were always a staple of everywhere that I visited. And so I just really wanted it. So I bought it, and I'm gonna put it in, and it's gonna be awesome. And here I am in the processing room, walking into our office. This is an office slash storage space where we can get organized. Right now we got stuff spread throughout the house, but we'll have a little desk and a filing cabinet in here and some shelves. And it'll also act as kind of a vestibule between the outside and the processing room. So we're a little farther along on this. We're about ready for paint, but we're very excited about it. Well, come on in and I'll tell you what's next. Before we can cover these walls and the rest of the walls, we're going to start roughing in electrical. The electrical system for the barn isn't too complicated. We're going to have some convenience outlets and lighting, of course. Then there'll just be dedicated circuits. The pasteurizer will have a circuit, the bulk tank will have a circuit, vacuum pump will have a circuit. So that is the next step once those are in the walls. Because some of the wiring will be surface mounted, but we want to get a lot of it in the walls just because it looks neater. Once those are covered, or once those are installed and inspected, then we can cover it. So things are moving along in the dairy quite swimmingly. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe so you can follow all of our progress. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Tomarosa.
Wow, look at my shadow. I'm so tall. Wow.
When the forms are still on the concrete, oh, don't fall. Virginia would be very mad if I broke her camera. Let's try a different angle.